I did not believe a screen of dried reed could beat an air conditioner. It sounded like the soft, nostalgic thing people say about the old days that falls apart the moment you check it. So I checked it. And what I found was not a folk charm at all. It was a piece of building physics so solid the United States government quietly agrees with it, and a mistake so common that nearly every home I walked past that summer was making it, mine included. The fix is almost insultingly simple. You shade the window from the outside, not the inside. You meet the sun outside. But the reason that one move works and the reason the expensive curtain on the inside barely does a thing is the part nobody ever explained to me. Once I understood it, I could not look at a sunny window the same way again. Let me set the trap up plainly first, because the grievance is the whole reason this matters. Through the hot months, cooling is the biggest thing on a lot of people's power bills. The air conditioner starts in the early afternoon and never fully stops, and a large share of what it fights walks in through one place, the window. On a bright day, a sun-facing window behaves like a small free heater bolted to your wall. The light comes through the glass, the room warms, and the machine runs to carry that warmth back out. So the meter turns and the bill arrives, and next summer you do it all again. And the way we fight back is to hang something on the inside of the glass. A heavy blackout curtain, a set of blinds, a cellular shade, maybe a film stuck to the pane. We spend real money on it, the room still warms, the unit still runs, and we quietly accept that as simply the cost of summer. You draw the curtains at noon, the room still turns warm and close by mid-afternoon, and the machine just labors harder to keep up. I accepted that for years myself, and I never once stopped to ask whether the whole approach might be backwards. Here is what finally made me look: a screen of split bamboo, a sudare, or a standing panel of woven reed, a yoshizu, costs about as much as a couple of lunches out, and it lasts for years of seasons. I grew up with these. In my grandmother's house, they went up along the veranda every June, and the rooms behind them stayed dim and cool while the yard baked white in the light. I always filed it under nostalgia, the sort of charming old habit that does not really hold up. Cheap reed against a modern compressor did not sound like a fair fight, but the more I looked, the less it behaved like nostalgia. This was not a soft comfort somebody kept up out of sentiment. It was written down, made to a standard, and handed on with care for more than 1,000 years. And the deeper I went, the clearer one uncomfortable thing became. The screen itself was the simple part. The thing we quietly got wrong was where we hang it. All those summers, I had been shading my own windows on exactly the wrong side of the glass, and so almost certainly have you. So let me take you through what I found in the order I found it, because it changed the way I look at an ordinary window. And it does not begin in a laboratory or a hardware store. It begins about 1,200 years ago in a poem. The poem sits in the Manyoshu, the oldest collection of poetry Japan has, gathered together in the 700s. In it, a woman is alone, waiting for the man she loves, and in the whole still room, the only thing that moves is the autumn wind lifting her sudare, the reed blind hanging at her window. That was the first thing that stopped me. This is more than 1,200 years ago, and the screen is already so ordinary that a poet can lean an entire ache of loneliness on it, and trust every reader to feel it at once. It is not exotic, and it is not special. It is simply there, the way a kettle is there in a kitchen. Then I found it again, in the most famous diary of the old imperial court. The court lady, Sei Shonagon, writing around the year 1000, describes a winter morning when the empress wondered aloud about the snow in the garden. Without being asked, Sei Shonagon crossed the room and rolled up the misu, the fine silk-edged version of the same screen, so her lady could see the white world outside. Another dated record, another famous name, and again, the reed screen is just part of the furniture of a life. I had gone looking for a folk memory. Instead, I kept turning up written history. So I stopped asking whether it was real and started asking how deeply it was woven in. The answer was completely. The Japanese have a word, koromogae, for the seasonal change of clothes, the switch to lighter things once the heat arrives. And in the old households, that same instinct reached past the wardrobe and into the house itself. Every summer, the rooms were changed over for the season. The heavy paper sliding doors, the fusuma, came out of their tracks, and lighter reed panels went in so a breeze could walk clean through the rooms. Along the deep eaves and the wooden veranda, the ongawa that wraps the outside of the house, the screens came down on their hooks and hung in the sun. Stand inside at noon and the light arrived already gentled, a cool, dappled green across the tatami instead of a hard white glare. When autumn came, the screens went up, the fusuma slid home, and the house sealed itself for the cold. This was a seasonal system the whole household ran on, as routine as putting the winter quilts away. And here is the part that finally killed the nostalgia theory for me. Nobody ever stopped making these. In Tokyo, the craft is still called Edo sudare, and it is still carried on the city's official register of traditional crafts, protected as living heritage. Long ago, the trade had split in two. The workshops in Kyoto made the ornate version, the misu with its fine silk borders, for the court and the temples. The makers in Edo made the plain, tough, everyday screen for ordinary townhouses, and after the 1600s it spread through the city until it was a common thing in commoners' homes. And there are craftsmen carrying it on right now. In Tokyo, a workshop called Tanaka Seirenjo has been weaving Edo sudare since around 1870, and it is passed down through 5 generations of the family, with Ko Taro Tanaka, a certified traditional craftsman, at the bench today, still filling orders for ordinary homes. Before the bamboo is ever split into slats, it is seasoned for a full 3 years, so the color settles and the wood grows hard enough to keep a clean edge for decades. Every screen is woven by hand, one strip at a time. This is a working trade, not a relic under museum glass. So there it was, laid out in front of me, a method written down 1,200 years ago, woven into an entire seasonal way of keeping a house. Still made by hand to a standard today. Every single thing I turned up told me the reed screen was real and serious and old beyond argument. And I still had not answered the one question that sent me looking in the first place. Why does a loose mat of dried reed hung out in the open air keep a room cooler than all the money I pour into fighting the very same sun from the inside of the glass? That answer was not waiting in the poems or the workshops or the seasonal rituals. It was hiding in the physics of the window itself. And when I finally saw it, it was so simple it almost annoyed me, and I could not believe how completely we had gotten it backwards. So here is the physics, and it hangs on one fact about glass that almost nobody stops to think about. Glass is a one-way gate for heat. When the sun hits your window, most of that light passes straight through the clear pane as if it were not there at all. But sunlight is shortwave energy, and the instant it lands on something solid inside the room, your floor, a rug, the arm of the sofa, it soaks in and comes back out changed. It leaves those surfaces as long-wave energy, as ordinary radiated heat. And that is the catch. That long-wave heat does not pass back out through the glass anywhere near as easily as the light came in. The window happily let the sunshine in for free, and now it holds most of that heat inside. Your room has quietly started to behave like a greenhouse, soaking up sunlight and turning it into warmth that lingers long after the light has moved on. So walk through what your inside curtain is actually doing. You pull the heavy blackout curtain across the window. The sunlight still crosses the glass because the curtain is hanging behind the glass. It strikes the fabric heats up, and now that warmth is radiating off your own curtain on the inside into the very room you are trying to keep cool. You did not stop the heat. You caught it a few inches too late, after it was already in the house, and your air conditioner still has to haul every bit of it back out. That, right there, is why a room bakes even with the curtains shut tight. I had done exactly that my whole life and never once questioned it. One quick thing before the number that changed my mind, because that number is the whole payoff here. I am working through a stack of these forgotten methods one at a time, and the next one takes on how people kept food through a whole winter with no freezer at all. Subscribe if you would like that to reach you when it lands. Now, the number. Here is what the outside screen does differently, and here is where I felt a little foolish. Hang the reed on the outside of the glass, where the old house always hung it, and the sunlight strikes the screen first, out in the open air, before it ever reaches the window. The reed warms up, of course, but it is standing outside in the breeze, so the heat it sheds just drifts off into the yard and never enters the house at all. The glass behind it stays cool because the hard sun never lands on it. It is not the reed that does the work, it is which side of the glass it hangs on. This is the same reason the old houses were built with those deep, overhanging eaves. The eave threw shade onto the wall and the upper window before the summer sun could reach them. The very same principle worked straight into the roofline, and the sudare simply carried it down to the glass itself. And this is not a folk theory I am asking you to take on faith. Modern building science lands in exactly the same place, and the gap is not close. The United States Department of Energy names exterior shading, shade on the outside of the glass, as the single most effective way there is to keep solar heat out of a building. And in their own research, the comparison is stark. Take one in the same shade and hang it outside the glass, and it cuts the sun's heat coming in by around half. Hang that very same shade on the inside instead, behind the glass, and it manages under a fifth. Same shade, opposite result, purely because of which side of the glass it sits on. A solid outdoor awning does better still, blocking as much as 2/3 of the heat on a south-facing window and more on a west one. And a home shaded from the outside simply runs cooler, with the air conditioner working less to get it there. Sit with what that actually means for a moment. The curtain you spent real money on, the one hanging inside your window right now, is working on the losing side of the glass, and it always was. Every hot summer of your life, you have been trying to shade a window from the wrong side, catching the heat only after it was already loose in the room. A screen of split reed from 1200 years ago was quietly beating it the whole time for a few dollars by doing the one thing that truly matters: meeting the sun outside. Once you have seen that, you cannot look at a bright window and an inside blind the same way again. So here is how you actually do this, and none of it is hard. Start by finding your worst windows. They are the ones that take the direct afternoon sun, the low, hard light out of the south and the west. A north-facing window barely needs the help. Then get yourself an outdoor reed screen size to cover that glass. There are two forms, and they suit two different situations. The hanging bamboo blind, the sudare, is the one for a window, especially a window sitting under an eave or a balcony that gives it something to hang from. The bigger standing panel of reed, the yoshizu, is the one you lean against the house like a screen, and it is the answer for a sliding glass door, a ground floor window with nothing above it, or the bright edge of a patio. Then comes the only rule that really counts, the one this whole video has been about. Mount it on the outside. Hang the sudare off the eave, off a balcony rail, off the top of the window frame, so the screen stands in the open air between the sun and the glass. If you rent and you cannot drill a hole, that is fine. Tension hooks, rail clips, and simple brackets that hook over the top of the frame will carry a light read screen without a single mark on the wall. Leave a hand's width of space between the screen and the window, so the warm air that builds behind it can rise and slip away instead of pressing against the house. And because the reed is a loose, open weave, it shades the glass while still letting a breeze pass straight through. So open the window behind it and let the air move. That is the part a solid shutter can never give you. When autumn comes, roll it up and take it down, exactly as the old house did, so the gentle winter sun you actually want is free to come back through. One small warning that falls straight out of everything you just saw. Do not hang the pretty screen on the inside as a decoration and expect the room to cool. You watched why it cannot. Behind the glass, even the finest sudare in the world is only a costly curtain. Now let me be square about what this is and what it is not, because that honesty is the whole point here. A reed screen shades. It does not run a compressor. On the hottest, most humid afternoon, in a sealed apartment with no air moving at all, it will not save you, and you may still reach for the air conditioner. That is fine. Its job is to cut the sun's load so the machine runs less and starts later, or so an open window and a fan are suddenly enough on their own. It earns its keep on the windows taking hard afternoon sun, and it does very little on a shaded or a north-facing one, so do not waste it there. And a light screen hung outside will catch a strong wind, so fix it down well, or a gust will have it off the rail before the week is out. Honest tool, honest limits. Which leaves the real question I kept circling back to. If this works, and it is this cheap, and it is this old, then how did we ever let it slip away? The answer is not a villain. Nobody outlawed the reed screen. What happened is quietly and sadder than that. The knowledge needed a certain kind of house to live in, and that house slowly disappeared. The deep eave that threw shade on the wall got flattened away in modern building. The Angawa veranda that gave the screen something to hang from vanished. The wide windows that swung open for a cross breeze hardened into sealed panes of fixed glass in an air-conditioned box. And the habit itself, the putting up in June and the taking down in autumn, was something you only ever learned by watching a parent or a grandparent do it, year after year, until your own hands simply knew. When the thermostat took over the whole job, there was nothing left to watch and nothing to copy, and so the chain that had carried this from one household to the next for 1,000 years just went quiet, not stolen, only never handed on. So take it back. It is a small thing to know, but it is exactly the kind of plain, useful knowledge our grandparents held without a second thought, and it deserves to be picked up again and carried forward. Teach it to whoever comes after you, the one rule that sits underneath all of it. Meet the sun outside. Do that, and they will carry it into rooms and houses you will never live to see. Before you go, tell me one thing down in the comments. Which way does your hottest window face, south, west, wherever that afternoon sun comes pounding in? And does your place even have an eave or a rail or a spot outside the glass where a screen like this could actually hang? I do read all comments, and I am honestly curious how many of us still have somewhere to put one. If you want to keep pulling these old practical skills back into the daylight, this is the channel that does it, one method at a time. So this summer, go find the window that bakes, hang your screen on the outside of it, and meet the sun outside before it ever reaches the glass.